wellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, featuring your hosts Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is The Power of Conflict, Why You Shouldn't Seek Peace.
Juicy.
We're speaking to all you peacekeepers out there. So before we do, Bridge, sorry, I cut you off.
I was just going to say, like, this whole, contest parenting, natural parenting, parents who really want to listen to their kids can actually tend to attract the peacekeepers, I reckon. You know, like that desire to placate maybe that creeps in, or that desire to be liked and always in connection.
Yeah.
So we're going to bust open why conflict is powerful and necessary and some of the drawbacks of peace.
Yes, we are. Before we do that, we'd love to remind you to jump on to nourishingthemother.com.au, and on our homepage, scroll down the bottom and there's a little red, I'm going to call it a sash, where you can
sash. I love that.
sign up with your email. And once a week, we'll send you off an email with everything we put out in the world, and you can pick and choose with those links where you'd love to dive a little deeper or listen a little further or read a little more. And then sometimes we'll also send you an infrequent but occasional more intimate email, which is really just, something we're not prepared to put out on social media, but we know the tribe of conscious women with whom you are involved are also wanting to continue those conversations.
Those who we have a greater sense of emotional safety with, I suppose.
Yeah, totally. So nourishingthemother.com.au and join our tribe. Okay, Bridget.
So this topic kind of came about because you and I were texting earlier before we hopped on to record, and we both kind of, conjured up this similar topic.
Which is so funny.
Yeah.
This podcast is such I don't know what it is, an ebb and flow of our lives, isn't it?
Yeah.
Actually, I ran into a dad, this is such a sidetrack, but you'll laugh. I ran into a dad at basketball the other day. He's like, oh, I've been listening to your podcast.
What?
And I went, have you? I was like, you're not the typical listener.
No.
And I said, what one did you choose to listen to?
A little bit nervous.
I can feel my tummy turning as I'm saying this. And he goes, it was one, where you were talking about intimacy between you and Nick. And I was like, oh, fuck. And he goes, but what I really loved about it, he said, both of you are really easy to listen to. And he said, I listen to a shit ton of podcasts, and that's not always the case.
Oh,
Said,
nice.
The audio quality is amazing. The way you talk is so raw and honest. And that's what I love about it.
Oh, that's a lovely
I
compliment.
know.
Thank you, kind sir.
I know. So I was like, wow, okay, cool. Thanks. That's really awesome that a dude is saying that to me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I can't think how I just got onto that.
No, neither can I, but I appreciate it. So,
sorry, Bridget.
It's okay.
I'm taking you off the path. I know, I'm sorry. The power of conflict. You and I have had a crazy few weeks. Which is what I was saying. And I was saying to you, I don't know what is going on, but I'm calling in conflict in like all these different areas of my life and over several weeks.
Yeah.
And I have been reflecting, which we will come back to when we come full circle in the toolkit we're, inspiring ourselves to give in this sermon, is just what the purpose of that is, that it's not random. And it also doesn't evade me that it is in combination with us calling ourselves to step up for 2019.
Yeah. Yeah. Right?
Exactly.
The universe speaking to us.
Which isn't always nice, is it? Like if you've got to grow to become the person for whom that reality is possible, then you got some shit you got to let go of.
And step into.
Right. And that's not going to happen with peace.
No.
So, but let's start the power of conflict. What do you see as the power of conflict?
I see it as incredibly galvanizing. I see that when we get challenged, we are called into greater integrity with our own truth. We are called to connect more deeply with what we value. We are less go with the flow with life, less trusting, I suppose, of kind of life just being the way we want it, we're starting to kind of look and see that we need to bring more governance perhaps to ourselves and how we move within life, which then kind of calls us again back into that place of who am I, what do I value, what do I need to do and say and be in order to create what I value, not just assume it's going to happen. It's that whole idea, like, you know, when we're really in peace and we're calm, we're very easy to kind of be overtaken by others. This is what happens with countries. Like in peacetime, countries' borders contract, you know, because they're kind of a little bit lazy and sure, you know, you
just in a comfort zone.
You're in a comfort zone, right? Like everyone's your friend and people can take you for a ride, but you kind of don't really mind because you just chilled out. It's all going peachy. But countries' borders expand in wartime. You know, when you are more in that testosterone drive, you're more kind of mobilized into action.
You're empowered.
You're empowered. You're on a path. You're a trailblazer. You're really using your voice, right? So both of those states we ebb and flow in and out of, but particularly as women, we can very much be conditioned to minimize conflict and minimize anger and keep some of these, you know, traits of ourselves in check because they're not to be put out there and they're to be kind of moved through quickly and getting back into lovely mother and peaceful and gentle and kind. But when we do that, we minimize the power of our conflict, the power of conflict to create change, to create, you know, vision, to stand up for what we believe in. You know, and we need conflict to do that. We need to perceive challenge in order to stake, you know, a claim on what we see as important in the world. Like if we didn't have a perception of challenge or a perception of wrongness, we wouldn't be willing to go into the place of conflict to create the change that we see is needed. So conflict is enormously powerful, but depending on the upbringing that you had or depending on, you know, your whatever you've been socialized to believe about conflict, there's a lot of layers around it perhaps being wrong or bad or something to steer clear of. And I think we miss out on the value of it if we hold that view.
What do you see then as the illusion of peace?
See, I reckon I grew up in like a peacekeeping kind of family. And so I think that the illusion of peace can mean that sometimes people lose their voice. I think that when you're in a place of peacekeeping, or if that's the general value that's held, it is to kind of keep the peace, then people don't speak with authenticity. And there's more of a sense of conforming to the collective or putting aside your own desires or truth or integrity in order to look at what the group wants. And I don't think that that's best for everyone if we dull our own voice, if we dull what we see as important, if we minimize our capacity to really make a meaningful contribution, because sometimes making a meaningful contribution can be being contrary, you know, it can be playing devil's advocate, can be ruffling feathers. And so peace might seem like it feels good. And I think, you know, our animal selves like to seek support and like to feel comfortable and want to feel like people like us. But
epidemiologically as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're tribal. We're conditioned to be safe in a tribe, and unsafe or, you know, equals death if we're cast out. Which also for centuries we would have that encoded, particularly as women who, if you didn't toe the line, it literally equaled your torture and death.
And it's happening in various areas of society now. Like that is being used to great effect for social engineering.
I know, we think the witch burnings have ended, right?
No, they haven't.
But it's just changed form.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yet the same, because we go, how could Hitler have happened? How could the witch burnings have happened?
That stuff is happening.
Right.
It's not.
It's exactly my point.
Yeah.
But we're so like, how could the masses, you know, just be so brainwashed by that and blah, blah. But it happens. We have media that still says and does the exactly perfect things to still keep a control on the mob, right?
Yes.
And therefore we have the them and the us.
Yeah. And every country, every single country, even supposedly Australia, who, I mean, I don't know what people think of Australia, but I think, like we've become a nanny state in recent years. But every single country has propaganda and has a really established propaganda in place. But so often when you're immersed in that, you don't see it. Like, you become part of it. You become acculturated into it. And that's why we must look at history to understand what the lessons are and to look for where it's happening now, because it's here. Nothing's missing. It's just changing form. So that's really important to open our eyes to. But that value again on that illusion of peace, it's true. It is illusory. And if we get too stuck in it and we get really, fixated on peace, we create a war within ourselves, because you cannot be in integrity with yourself if you're constantly trying to keep the peace with others. It's impossible. Because
you're giving away pieces of yourself in order to be loved, liked, receive the feel-good feelings of in a community rather than being outcast. I'll give away pieces of myself in order to have that.
Yeah.
So it's that saying that I hear you say often, Bridget, is, I think it was DeMartini, wasn't it? I would rather the whole world against me than my own soul.
Yeah.
Because ultimately you have to pick. Really, the stronger you stand in your truth, the more haters you'll attract.
Yeah, it's exactly true. And if we get too stuck in the haters, and if we get too stuck in what might people think of us, then we are going to continue to minimize ourselves and minimize our capacity to make a difference in our values, because we'll always be censoring parts of us to fit in. And the essence of you does not want that.
No. And nor does our family unit. So even when you're saying I grew up in a, and I saw you do the quotation marks, a peaceful family, it's the war is brewing. You just can't see it, right?
Yeah.
But it's there, and biologically, epidemiologically, it's still encoding in you a sense of war. It's not conscious, it's unconscious, but that doesn't mean it doesn't come back to you. And that the war doesn't breed in another form within that family. So as you're saying, it might come within, or it might come within the dynamic.
Because it has to be expressed. Like, families, just as we are, each individual is expressing and repressing traits all of the time. And so is every family. When you're feeling really connected to your mother, maybe you're feeling disconnected to your husband or your brother or your sister. That is ebbing and flowing all of the time. And when we start to look at where we're feeling really connected and supported, okay, well, where are we feeling challenged and disconnected? Because those two things are in conservation. And when we're more able to look at those and look at how they serve us, we're more able to come back into our own integrity, knowing that if I stay true to myself and if I stay in alignment with myself, the world around me will both support and challenge me, but that's okay because I'm staying connected.
So this is what I love the most, actually, because I've been reflecting a lot on conflict. I actually love that bit of conflict gives you a very conscious opportunity to check in with your integrity. Am I on the right path? Am I content with the version of myself that I'm being and putting out in the world? Does it match with who I believe I am? Am I shining my light the way I believe I should or could? It really gives this self-reflective opportunity bred out of pain to really go, am I where I want to be? Am I making the right call for me? And if the answer is yes, then the conflict, just as you're saying, Bridget, strengthens that.
Yeah.
Because you will then start to create a narrative within your body that's, well, I'll do it without you.
The conflict serves to burn away what's not necessary for us to stay in our truth. Well, burns away what's maybe superfluous in some ways to our mission, in a way. Like, it gets us to really look at who we're willing to be and who we're willing to take with us and how we're willing to be fearlessly authentic in that, knowing that we could piss people off in that process. But when we do it from a place of humility, but integrity, we can be willing to risk that, knowing that we're being true to ourselves.
So this I also find interesting because I've been sitting with this nuance. How do you know when you're staying in your ego and you're finding yourself separating off into pride? Oh, well, they're this. Oh, well, I don't need them anymore. You know, all these stories of the ego versus the humility, which is what I'm really fascinated by, certainly in my experience of conflict in the last, month or so, is how do you still stay open in pain? So how do you, because conflict is still just a looping pattern, right? In a way, the conflict that you experience that produces the emotional effect in you, the emotional effect is a looping pattern. So it will come from your childhood. So the pain that you're experiencing is an inner child wounding. So how do you experience the pain, and instead of closing off defensively with the ego, pushing them away and going, well, fuck you, how do you stay open and humble? Almost, I'm going to say Christ-like. How can you experience torture from those you love and still love them? You know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean. Yeah, and I think it's important to not disown that ego because I think it's enormously powerful and we need it. But it's when we get stuck in the ego story that it becomes destructive. So I know in my, recent experience of conflict, it's that animal reaction of just wanting to fuck you, like, I don't give a shit and I'm not like bending to that and like screw you, I hope blah 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 happens. Like, all of that stuff, right? Like all that nasty, sludgy, like childlike behavior was totally circling in my consciousness, totally. And I know that that's not truth, but I also know that journeying that and allowing that to be there, but not like hooking into it, was part of the process into getting to the centeredness. The centeredness being that these people I'm in conflict with are simply just connecting from a place of where their values are at, right? And that we likely both have very similar goals in mind, but have very different ways of viewing how to get there and how to achieve that. And our ego wants so much to have the right way.
Well, to make them wrong and us right.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then you don't have to change. Then you can just stay in your own story.
Yeah. Right?
Which feels so good. Yeah, because if I'm pissed off and angry, then
we'll look for everybody to back up our story.
Yeah,
we'll
right.
Look for everybody to agree with us to make us right.
Yeah. And them wrong.
Yeah. And that's the behaviors that we need to notice because that is the ego kind of out of control.
And I think that's dangerous when all we're surrounding ourselves with is yes people.
Yeah.
That's dangerous.
Yeah. And it develops complacency. It develops, cultivates groupthink, which is not good for anybody. So yeah, to totally journeying that and then trying to come back into more of a heart-centered place of, okay, so we're both wanting similar things but coming at it from a really different set of values. And if I can see that I've come to this through this value and this experience and this life view and that, perspective on the world, and they've come to this view from, their own unique experiences and perspective on the world, then how can I possibly judge that as being wrong when we just have different lenses with which to view the world? And that is humbling because then you just simply recognize that we are all a product of the realities that we've created and the experiences that we've had and what we've perceived. And from that place, I can stand in my integrity and what I know is my truth and then go, oh, I see you and I see what is your truth. It's not mine, but I can respect you over there. But don't project, but I'm not going to be told I have to be that way. I'm not going to give up pieces of myself to conform to how I'm perhaps being asked to or maybe asked to,
No, I totally do. So my next question then is, because I know this is something we chew around in our members group often, is it's like the courage to be disliked, right? Once you work that out and you come full circle with integrity, okay, that is you, this is me. How do you then put that boundary in place and make it safe for yourself to let that go enough to be you?
Well, I'm still working on that actually, like in this kind of case, because I think it's one of those things that requires I don't know if sensitivity is the right word, but a gentleness with them, and you, particularly if it's like a close relationship, particularly with it, if it's a relationship that you really value. I mean, sometimes conflict can come up in relationship with friends or other people, and we can naturally let those relationships disintegrate, and no hard feelings, they change, you know, new friendships come and go, whatever. But where it's somewhere where you really deeply value a close connection, you know, it needs to be done with a really respectful kind of language, I think, where you're coming at it knowing that there's hurt here. You know, there's going to be hurt here. And so how do you enter that? And I think it's that piece again, staying open into feeling that and noticing and moderating your own defensiveness as a protection mechanism that comes up to shield us from feeling hurt, right? Because most of us will go to anger before we're willing to feel pain. Certainly that's certainly the pattern that's played out.
I think it is for nearly everyone I've met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So and I think the more that we allow ourselves to sit and dwell in there and not close down, but stay open to it and look at different perspectives and allow ourselves to journey it, that we're going to be able to then give access to the hurt. And when we can go to that place, we can see a wider perspective. And we can then decide from there how we want to sensitively or respectfully enter into what boundaries might look like, or what kind of meeting the shared values can look like while respecting each person's truth.
How do you think you go about that if that's what you're bringing to the table?
I don't know. I reckon you've got a better idea of that from me. I really haven't entered that fully yet.
Yeah, yeah.
But I would love to hear your wisdom on that.
You flipped the tables on me,
I'm
Bridget.
gonna. Yeah.
Look, I'm still learning that too. I think I wonder when you have a top value that revolves around connection and community, whether it is just inherently always a spiraling life lesson, really. And you just get deeper and deeper insights into yourself and how you be in the world and how you handle people in that process, because the person you're handling is always a reflection of you, past or present, perhaps both at the same time, right? So I often, the way that because I'm well practiced and have such a high value on family, if I can pretend in my head that the person in front of me is my child, I can communicate exceptionally well.
I would agree with that.
But if this person in front of me, if I don't do that, well, it's not going to go well.
And I've also seen that.
Yeah. So, you know, I still think I'm learning that. And sometimes I don't want to. Sometimes I just want to be like, well, fucking raw.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to control all the time.
And that also has a place, right? And I think we naturally will do that where we value the relationship less. You know what I mean? Like where we value the relationship less and where we feel like there's less to lose, maybe, that we will let raw.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe
not.
Depends if the person in front of you likes being parented or not. So I had an interesting experience of that actually just this week. I am going to be cryptic so that it's kept cryptic. But I thought I responded in a parenting way. And then my husband looked at me and smiled when the feedback came back via a third party that it wasn't received in which the way I thought I'd delivered it. And I was laughing. I went, yeah, righto. And my husband looked at me and laughed and he went, I don't know that you would have been as calm as you think you were. And I laughed and replayed it in my head and I went, oh, that could have come across as condescending. as I've knelt down.
I think naturally parenting an adult or parenting, like anyone other than your own child probably can come across as
probably. But I guess for me, it works as a tool that I can parent myself and my emotions enough to stay there.
Mm.
I can stay in the discomfort long enough because conflict I want to run from.
Mm.
I have a history of violence and yelling and screaming and freezing type of terror. So it's not a safe place for me to be. And my biological body tells me that. Mm. My heart rate goes through the roof. I start sweating copious amounts of sweat. I'll probably go red. My voice will quaver. It is not. Every part of my mammalian brain is telling me to get the fuck out of there. Mm. But the adult part of me comes in and says, make it safe.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to parent myself in those moments because
to be able to stay
there because I know what it's like to have a door slammed on you and having absolutely no power. And I'm not interested in that. I would rather stay in the discomfort with you and come to a journey that has some sort of end, even if that end is, look, I need some time to think about this, but I'm going to come back to you. That's fine. But not I'll rip all the power away from you by being aloof and ice queenie and shut the door in your face.
Yeah.
That's not respectful communication.
No.
That's power tripping. And that is extremely toxic and dysfunctional in relationships. And hey, I've journeyed that. I've come from a childhood of that. I've done it in relationships and it hasn't gone well. So, parenting is probably the next step. So now I find myself in this space where I've got to move beyond that current toolkit. So it's worked. I keep myself there. I stay in the discomfort long enough.
But how do you build on that so it's not from a place of parenting?
Exactly.
Yeah.
How do I make it safe beyond my one value or genius? How do I make it safe in all areas? How do I experience conflict? And I do it in my relationship as well. That's also true. I can really hang in there and stay in discomfort for an extremely long period of time. And because I'm used to having really awkward conversations with women in circle, I can hold really awkward conversations for as long as you want to be there for and longer still because I'll bring you back into them.
Yeah.
So that's a practice for me that I've established. But how do I do that with someone who's not willing
to be there?
Who to be there is a different sphere. So, that's where I find myself needing to parent myself. And that's where I actually keep coming back to my practice of Tantra, which I keep, and it's so funny because I've been circulating it in my body for, and I've talked about it on the podcast for the last 6 months or so. How do you stay here to feel more? And be here feeling as much as you think you have the tolerance to feel and still feel more. And so I have been circulating that in my body for a good 6 months. And I can see the purpose in here, right? Because this is it. How do you be bigger, achieve more, be more, stay in more? Well, you got to let go of the shit that's holding you back from doing that. So here's the practice, girlfriend.
Yeah, here's the conflict to really test.
And here it is again and again. Still haven't got it. All right, here's a little more for you.
Just keep throwing it.
I just keep throwing it. So I can see the purpose in it.
It's like a conditioning.
Yeah. So I look at it as almost like a spiritual practice. So I'm not scared of its presence.
I love that. There's so much power in that, in viewing. And I mean, I really see parenting as that.
Exactly.
Like this.
And relationship.
And, how do I breathe into this thing that I want to run from that my child
Exactly.
How do I stay here longer? How do I make this okay for myself?
How do you feel more?
Yeah.
Right? And stay open, not close yourself off because it's too scary to be here.
And closing yourself off can look very insidious, like busyness or needing to clean or not wanting to feel, right? Like it can, and we will have been conditioned in myriad different ways from our own childhood to do that, won't we?
Totally. So I've been sort of keeping a list of some of the benefits of conflict.
Good.
Shall I read you a few?
Hit me with them.
All right. Number one, which I am fascinated by, is I get exhausted, because you think about the amount of physical energy I'm running with that childhood story of conflicts not safe. So I'm in fight or flight almost continuously.
That's exhausting.
Exhausting. So exhausting, Bridget, I will let myself rest. And in the last 6 months, do you think I could even let myself rest for 10 minutes? Nope.
Which is why you got anemic.
Right. Exactly. Because the mounting list I had in my head of all the shit I wasn't getting done, I could not let myself rest because there was always shit to get done.
Yeah.
And Julie, you want to get somewhere different? You fucking show up.
Yeah. Do that shit.
You do it. Yeah. And you do it even when you're exhausted.
Yeah.
And you don't.
Like the martyr.
Yeah. Well, and even couldn't even frivolously let myself rest because I'd be like, fuck, I can think of those 5 things. I could just do that thing right now. I'll just do it now. You know, and I could feel myself doing that and being like, oh, yeah, but doing that thing would make me feel really good. So
like battling with rest.
I'll do it, you know.
Yeah.
And I was saying to my husband just this week, I was like, I'm so fucking exhausted. This is exhausting. I have to sleep. And I have slept and I have found pockets of sleep.
Oh, delicious.
That you would not believe. I have slumbered in and out of sleep in between a toddler running in and out of the room.
You're giving yourself permission. Why is this now?
Well, exactly, right? So this is the number one thing we say to our tribe. Okay, so when you're looking at the thing that you're struggling with, what are the benefits you're getting out of it? And how can you give yourself those things consciously so you don't need to be hit with it unconsciously? Yeah. So this was the first question I had in my head. What am I trying to get unconsciously that I'm not giving myself consciously? Because it's still here for that purpose too.
Yeah.
Here we go, rest. I was like, okay, so I said to my husband yesterday, okay, I think that's part of it. I am going to give myself physical permission to rest, not fill every 10-minute pocket because there's shit that has to get done. And we've had a beautiful restful day. I know it's just day one, but I'm reminded of the pain of conflict. And if that ain't enough to make me do the shit I don't want to do, like resting because I have a story around why that's not okay, it's time for me to bust that shit, right?
Yeah. So you're going to have to do more. You're doing more of it by doing the very thing that you've resisted so much, you change the story.
Exactly. And I make it safe. And I expand and change who I am and therefore what possibilities are possible in my sphere, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I get the opportunity to self-check my integrity. And I do. I get to come back into my humility. Is this who I am? Regardless of what the world says I am, who do I know myself to be? And are my actions in alignment with that?
Yeah.
Yes, is the answer I receive. And I'm okay. I'm okay. So how do I stretch that out? I'm okay within me.
Yeah.
So how do I stretch that out to be okay even when I'm and I visualize being in a crowded room or, you know, I know this is like crazy, but I even visualize Jesus walking through the cross, you know, to his death and being, you know, stoned and in pain. And, you know, I haven't grown up necessarily in that religious culture, but there's something iconic about that martyrdom.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's countless spiritual factors in countless, you know, religious structures that you can come across where it's the same sort of thing. How can you still be love when everyone around you is tearing you apart physically and metaphysically? And so I keep coming back to that as a spiritual practice. If this is it, how do I make myself okay to take up space, to be seen even when I don't want to be seen, which is my story.
Yeah.
You know, I'm too fucking tall. Everyone sees me everywhere and notices me. I can't hide. Always fucking hated that. Hated it growing up. Walk into a club, everybody saw me. And I just wanted to hide in the darkness. Can't hide. Too tall, Julie. There's nothing ironic about, like, there's everything ironic about that.
By your very stature, you're being called to.
Exactly, right? Grow up. So how do I still show up in front of the people that I know don't like me and make it a spiritual practice of still loving myself enough that I can project that sphere out enough to be safe with them? How do I do that? Well, I'm getting plenty of opportunity to do that, let me tell you. And the really interesting thing is, as you say, when there's conflict coming from one way, there is a massive counterbalancing amount of support. So I'm experiencing an intense amount of conflict at the moment, and I'm literally keeping track of the intense amount of support I'm getting in its contrast.
Powerful.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is fucking genius. And even super public demonstrations of love and support for me that wouldn't exist.
Well, you're not in this conflict.
Right?
Yeah.
And more intense relationships. So I am forming tighter, stronger relationships with people I otherwise wouldn't need to have a tight, strong bond to, but they're my safety. So I'll make it a point to love them and open to them a bit more, in which case they want to love and open me a bit more.
Yeah.
Fascinating. It brings my focus back intensely to my family because I'm like, fuck the world. What's most important to me? That's where I spend my time.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Genius.
Yep. And it gives you more tools there. It gives you more connection there. It gives you more expansion there.
And in my relationship, right. And in my relationship, because now we're talking about the things.
And the conflict outside. So it's bringing more connection inside.
Way more connection inside. It's them and us.
Yes. That is
you and me against the world.
But that's one of the most consistent things that shows up in aligned parenting too. So most without a doubt that the fractious relationships with in-laws or parents makes a husband and wife or partnership tighter. Conversely, issues in partnership, you've usually got some closeness with a sibling or with a parent,
or brings your intention and focus on your children 100-fold.
Yep.
And there's no accident in that.
It's always in conservation.
Yes.
It's always in balance.
Yes.
And when we start to bring this awareness, it's you can't miss it.
No, you can't miss it. Well, that's a lot of, benefits, but I'm still going.
Okay.
Are you prepared to hang in there?
I am.
I get rushes of energy because of those hormones that I'm pumping in my body that wake me up. Well, if I'm tired and I'm running a tired story.
What do you need to wake yourself up? Galvanizing.
Serves me really well.
Health giving as well. Kind of, it's really
vitality.
Yeah.
It's still sexual energy. It's still life energy.
Yeah.
And I get fueled up with surges of it. And interestingly, actually, now I've just said that out loud, my husband, almost like pheromones, picks up on that and he comes in closer to me with some sort of sexual innuendo. Isn't that interesting?
I don't think I've paid attention as much.
No, I've just connected those dots.
But that's really good.
I know.
That's so interesting.
You'll have to pay attention.
I will, because I've been getting heaps of innuendo lately and I'm like, what is that? Why am I getting this? It's like really weird.
Except that you're also experiencing a huge amount of conflict. I bet it's like pheromones.
Maybe it is. Yeah, you're right.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Yeah. And it does this fuck you energy. So that energy of the ego makes you dig deeper. Well, I'll fucking do this thing just so I can shove it in your face. And I'll do it so well. 10 times better than what you thought I was going to do it. And how much does that serve the mission of whatever I'm trying to do?
Yeah.
So much.
Yeah.
I get to revisit my childhood stories. So the stories that I run on them and me, they're not new stories.
Yeah.
They're old. The stories I run on how safe or unsafe conflict is, they're old. The feelings I feel and what I want to do, say, and think in response are old. I get to see them again because I'm not conscious to them otherwise.
Yeah.
So I write them down and I get conscious and I start working on them.
Yeah.
It actually brings up interestingly, I was thinking about this today, it actually elevates my self-worth. Isn't that interesting?
That the conflict has that function.
Yes, because you have to think about who you are. And even if you're in the ego, fuck you energy and you haven't got to humility and integrity yet, even if you're there, it's still elevating your self-worth because you're still pumping yourself up in order to be okay against the enemy.
Yeah. I think it also it creates clarity. It creates clarity of values. It creates clarity of what you know. I know that I know that I know. You know, like, and that's powerful because we're in our greatest potential for self-worth when we're in our highest values. And when those values are challenged and we're called to assess them and go, no, like, I'm good here. That's galvanizing, and you know, we're able to reflect on, you know, on those parts of ourselves that do give us great value, you know, and are who we are.
Absolutely. I get to practice staying open and making safe and feeling more. And if I can feel more in the shadow, I can feel more in the ecstasy.
Yeah.
And conversely. So I can also link my ability to stay in conflict into something I want to do because I can think about it in terms of a tantric experience. I want to go further there. So I have to go further here. So I can link it that way. It does bring into focus my communication, and I have to consciously think about how I'm going to communicate and what that brings up for me. So it hones your skill of communication.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. Actually, I think that's all I've got in there. Oh, there's a few little ones, but not worth mentioning. But that's a lot of benefits.
Some huge benefits
of conflict. So I can 100% see how when I'm willing to take a step beyond my own personal assault, how on a spiritual and human experience of growth and evolution perspective, this is perfect for me. So don't name, blame and shame, just be here. And stop making it about anyone but you. It's all about you.
And at the very least, it very quickly busts the illusion of that desire for constant support or that desire for everything to be peaceful and lovely. Because how much would we stagnate? How much would we grow complacent and bored and
let go our top values?
In some way, kind of
them.
lifeless, you know, because we really find our voice in conflict, and that's powerful.
And the things that are most important to you in this lifetime, you'll come back to in times of conflict.
Yeah,
they will focus in intensity, which is fascinating and exactly perfect for what this world needs, right?
Absolutely.
No accidents and no mistakes. So the purpose of families, the purpose of relationships is not peace, it's growth. So stop seeking peace because there isn't growth when there's peace. You're just happy where you are. Kumbaya.
Which was your story, right?
Right.
And you kind of had to journey that. We all have to journey the illusion before we get to the truth. And we create an illusion till we get to our next truth. Like that is our life. That is the spiral.
But don't for a second think that your conflict or your experience of conflict is without purpose, because it has purpose. But you have to be able to decode its purpose in order to get to a place of safety and gratitude with it. And then I think you can enter your life in a different way and the people with whom represent that conflict, because they're no longer the enemy, but in fact part of your feedback and your growth.
And in some way giving you a gift. They're giving you a gift of that ability to expand in ways you might not have accessed before.
Yeah, they're making you more you. How do you still be you even when it hurts?
Yeah. And
be you and be you and be you. How do you still do that? Well, these people help you do that. So, you know, I'm still working on getting to the point of being grateful. I want to be kiss the ground grateful that I could kneel in front of those people and say thank you. I'm not there yet, but I know as a spiritual practice that's where I want to be. So I hope that you can, on some level, or at least feel like you're on the pilgrimage of kiss the ground grateful for your conflict.
Yeah.
And that's conflict in your family, conflict in your relationship, because it's all in dynamic and it's all conserved and it has purpose. But you've got to stop making it them and make it me.
And stop making it wrong.
It's all the self-work, which is certainly what we do in Loathing to Loving and Aligned Parenting. We just look at them from two different perspectives.
Yeah.
So Loathing to Loving is more spiritual growth and a bit of relationship. Aligned Parenting is very parenting relationship focused.
Yeah.
So if that's where you're at, then we really invite you to join us. We have our next live round of Aligned Parenting on Feb 11th.
We do. We'd love you to join us.
We would. So nourishingmother.com.au, and you can click the button on the homepage to Align Parenting to find out more.
And to connect with you, Jules,
is thepleasurenutritionist.com, and I have literally opened my first women's circle, which I'm still taking registration. Yeah, thank you. It's a big step up for me. So that starts on the 24th of Feb, and I'm also putting together girls, I'm calling them new moon circles, so coming of age ceremonies, and I'll be beginning those in March, so stay tuned.
Such a gift.
And you, Bridge?
suburbansandcastles.com. And remember to nourish the mother to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.